Awesome. Okay, thank you everyone for joining us today for the Policy and Budget Subcommittee Special Meeting. It is January 30th, 1 p.m. Just a little bit of feedback in reference to how to make public comment for those that may be on Zoom or log in. Just raise your hand if you have to make public comment, and we have a section for public comment. So we can first start off with our agenda with welcomes and introductions. So my name is Nicole Green. I am the chair of Policy and Budget Subcommittee, and I will pass it over to I'm very excited, our new committee member.
I'm Jeffrey Robinson, representing Central County.
And you are new to Policy and Budget.
And new to Policy and Budget.
Justin?
Justin Manzerber, West County.
We'll go ahead and for staff.
Hi there, Patrice Guillory, Office of Reentry and Justice.
Hello? Hey! I had to check if my audio was working. Hello, I'm Garyana Youngblood. I'm also with the Office of Reentry and Justice.
Michelle Elizondo, Program Coordinator with the Office of Reentry and Justice.
Awesome. And I don't believe we have anybody else, right, Garyana? Oh, we have Doug. Now give him a second to, again. Welcome, Doug. We were just starting off our meeting and doing welcomes and introduction. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Sure, I'm Doug Leach with the Multi-Faith Action Coalition.
Thank you for joining us today. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Moving on to any announcements. Seeing none in the room, any announcements on Zoom? Okay. Next item on our agenda is for public comment on any items under jurisdiction of the Community Advisory Board and not on the agenda. Seeing none in the room. Any on Zoom? No? Okay, right along. Okay. The next agenda item is the approval of our minutes from the December 15th Cabinet Policy and Budget Subcommittee meeting, which is on attachment 1 and it's page 4 through 6. This is a voting item. We have a motion to, I'll give you guys a second to read it first. Garyana, if you can please go to page 4. Just want a second to kind of look at it and get a motion to approve.
Am I able to make a motion?
Yes.
All right, I move to approve these minutes.
And would you like to second the motion?
I'll second the motion.
And that was Jeffrey, second the motion.
Nicole, would you like me to take a roll call vote?
Yes, please.
Nicole Green,
Aye.
Justin Van Zerber,
Aye.
Jeffrey Robinson.
Thank
Jeffrey?
you.
Oh, okay. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to move to number 4, our reason of being here today. So very excited about this meeting for us to kind of debrief on our December meeting and also give us a chance to kind of get you caught up to where we are, Jeffrey, and any questions that you may have. So we had our housing priority workshop in December. So today is for us to kind of come together and talk about our feedback from that and what we think. So Justin and I kind of give you an update on what we talked about or what happened there. And there's any feedback, because you have a lot of experience you're bringing as well. So if there's any feedback or questions you have, definitely jump in and add your pieces in there. So it starts on attachment number 2, page 7 through 21, kind of goes over what was covered that day. It also gives a overview of what was presented to Policy and Budget. So I'll give a second for us to kind of look through it. I'll let you kind of scan through it, Jeffrey, because you didn't get a chance to see it, and then we can kind of start discussion on it. So I want to at least give Jeffrey an opportunity to look at it. In case he has questions and get caught up a little bit, and then we can have open discussion. With that, Justin?
Yeah, that's great. For ORJ, did we get any additional information from the request that we made during the meeting?
The primary request that I recall hearing was in regards to, allow families, numbers of those being served in Contra Costa County. So though unfortunately, we did not submit that question to them, but we did recently look over their, service data. And we were able to identify that they had about 95 individuals on their active caseload list, in addition to, I want to say close to 30 or so on, wait lists, right? Those are individuals being serviced through their existing contract with us.
And thanks, Patrice, that's helpful. And one of the follow-up questions was for H3 on their specific data related to AB 109. We had talked about like they have emergency beds, but they didn't have any information about use rate or frequency of use. You remember that?
My apologies. We'll get that additional information for you guys. I do know that there was just recently some outreach from H3 to possibly open up referrals from other AB 109 community program providers because they wanted to see the increase in utilization of the shelter beds. So
I can't give an update on that. It's
Okay.
already started.
Okay.
A little bit, yeah.
Okay.
So emails are going out daily for
okay.
availability on AB 109 beds and probation bed. I think it's still important for us to get the number, because right now, what they are indicating in their email, there is a lack of referrals. There isn't anyone to refer. So the beds are, we get a list daily of the availability of their beds, but the data that he's asking for would be great. But I know it has been going out to community members. I got one yesterday, and then I was added to the list, so I get it daily now. So maybe I guess another question would be, how are they connecting to other providers? Because I end up getting that because I know of, but I don't know if everyone's getting it. I know probation is on it, but I don't know if every CBO is getting it.
So, in the past, we used to have, and we're in the process of doing it now, we used to have the AB 109 partner directory that would go out to both county agencies and the AB 109 community program providers. We're actually in the process of updating that information now. So we've been getting, or mostly Garyana's been getting flurry of emails and updates. So we hope to get that out as soon as possible. And that will go out to all of the service staffs that are essentially tasked or assigned to supporting or providing AB 109 services,
Okay,
both county and CBO side.
okay.
Nicole, point of clarification, you were saying that you get an update of the availability of beds. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, for the shelter beds, it got an email for AB 109 and probation for availability for shelter beds.
And that's inclusive of those emergency beds?
It's only those emergency beds.
Yeah, it's all emergency beds.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Do you mind she can't. Can you send that to Gariana so Gariana can send it to me?
But it's what are they sending you? They're not sending you client.
It's no client information. It's just, I can tell you what it is. Give me 1 second,
Okay.
because I got one today. So it doesn't have any client information on it at all. It's just an email that kind of tells you what, how many beds are available as of date. And then they give you a spreadsheet, for you to enter your client information and send the referral over to them. So it goes out right now. I don't know who else is getting it, but I know that some of the county partners are getting it because I can see their names on it and probation is on there. To receive it, and it's for 8109 and probation.
Okay.
Did that answer your question, Justin?
Well, I guess at the date of that was sent, how many beds were available?
For AB 109 is 2
2 beds.
as of today.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, Nicole, I think that
Probation.
information is helpful. I was looking for more of like a longitudinal, so like over the year, what's their percentage of use, right? But that's cool that they send all that out.
It's been nice to be able to get it because then,
Yeah,
I like the connection between, because we didn't have that before now. So you don't have to wait anymore and then kind of like open up core more so that you can actually have direct, which wasn't available to CBOs and partners. It was more like everything was separated. So it's nice to kind of see that it's starting, things still have to be fine tuned, but at least that collaboration is kind of starting between the partners and being able to connect people from through programs. So it's a start, but I think what you're asking for is great. I did not have that written down, which is why I love your brain. So I appreciate you making that note. I had the Laos question. So I'm glad that you were able to remember that part for me.
and Nicole, I think building off of that, it might be worthwhile for us to think about including that in our recommendations at the end of the year of like naming that type of communication is really effective and helpful, and for H3 and other county departments to kind of build on that. I know we've made reference to collaboration, but if we can spell out examples so that they're used year on year, that might be a helpful approach.
I agree, because I know at our next meeting, we will be, I don't think it's in this one. No, we'll be going over the work plan. I know our last bullet on there, if I can recall, is kind of in reference to that, so that we can elaborate more on the actual recommendation document about that. So we should add that piece in there, and you'll be able to see it. So that it's good timing that you join now, because then you got time to kind of catch up and stuff. So if anything we say doesn't make sense, just ask us and then we'll break it down. So so definitely I made a note. So when we actually look at our next meeting, next month, when we look over our work plan, we can definitely add that. And there was some other items that we wanted to add too. So moving forward, unless there's any other feedback that you have, I wanted to, Justin. Okay. Yeah, do you have a chance to kind of look over? I know it's kind of quickly glanced. Okay. So I made some notes from our last meeting. Thank you for bringing up that thing about H3. So today is kind of to recap what we heard. Was there any notes that RJ was able to capture on the whiteboard outside of what we already had?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so.
So, I mean, I wrote down and kind of typed out the notes that I had and my takeaway from it. So I don't know if we can go ahead and, I guess, tackle it that way and see if there's anything missed or what are we feeling as of right now based on what we heard from the recommendation. So our job now is individuals came to present. We're looking for feedback from other housing providers. It wasn't a meeting for a proposal of programs or any sort like that, just their feedback on how they'll be able to utilize this one-time funding or areas that they may see, and that's what we came with this particular document. So now we're here to kind of take all that stuff that we heard, that you've seen here, and kind of see where do we feel as a committee where our recommendations may lie, or even based on your own knowledge of the housing, where do we see right now that how we want to be able to do this recommendation, if it's like an RFP or do we want to allocate funds, kind of get an idea before we keep on moving forward and we lose what we gained from December. So that's why we're here today. So my takeaway from all these notes in here that I've made a bullet, one thing that stood out to me was the feedback, especially from H3 around the bridge housing, the funding that it took for them to even do, is it Project Room Key? I always say it wrong. How they talked about, I believe it was around the $4 million, and that wasn't even getting the program up and running. I also made a note of they are very familiar with that process of constantly utilizing the one-time funding, and also really taking in the feedback from Hope Solutions and Laos on the barriers, right, from individuals leaving incarceration and what it really looks like from a housing perspective to get this up and going. The maintenance costs, I made some notes about that I took away from that. The time limit, in order to ensure collaboration between partners for enrollment processing, additional core positions within reentry to work on the just and involved population. I already mentioned Project Room Key. Those were some key notes that I took away. I've been doing a lot of research in reference to different ideas out there on how individuals have been put a request out there for a proposal. So I have some ideas I want to share with you guys, and I want to get your notes and your feedback as well, and some feedback from RJ. But those are the main takeaways that I took from that. The cost is really what stuck out to me, right? On how much it's gonna cost to start a new program, right? From the bottom up, and the parts that need to be done in reference to partnership and connection. So I'll hush, so I'm not just over talking, and kind of have conversation with you all and see, Justin, what did you take from that, or from what you read, or just from your own knowledge in reference to housing, some feedback that you may have for the one-time funding.
Yeah. So I think my big takeaway was that we don't have enough resources, which I think we all knew. And that these organizations are trying to come at it from like a piecemeal approach, where whatever they can get access to, they throw at to supporting. It didn't feel like H3 had a real focus on the AB 109 population. It felt like they were talking more holistically about our county. And I think in order to really serve that population, it has to be an intentional approach. And so I would really like to see us to continue the conversation with them to see how we can strengthen that. So it's not so much an afterthought, or we got funding so we can do X, Y, and Z, but like, what is our intent on serving AB 109 individuals? I also, I mean, it's really expensive. All of the departments and agencies laid that out. For me, I wish we had, and maybe this is something we can allocate resources to, is a real understanding of what that gap is. I think people talk in this, if we had more money, we could do X, Y, and Z, but I don't know how we allocate money until we know how many people actually need to utilize it. And so I think I'm really struggling with even putting a number on a piece of paper, because we don't have that information to support the justification for it.
And you mean in reference to how many just and impacted population need housing?
Yeah, like aren't being served through these current strategies.
So to piggyback in reference to, so what I've been doing a lot of digging. So what I've learned from I agree with everything that you're saying. And I think it's important to understand the agencies that's number one, the agencies that we work on. So in reference to H3, what I've been able to learn is the focus will never just be solely just and impacted, because it's funded, right? So they look at homeless as a whole from Contra Costa County. The good thing about that, there is being work done to focus on the justice involved population, where it does to be more CBOs and individuals at the table to uplift that. And there's things that are coming through the pipeline. So to your response, I agree with you. There needs to be more of a lens around that started. There wasn't before, but it's starting now, right? So I don't know if outside of the PIC count, or their HMI, that's a question we can ask from their HMIS system. Is there a way to actually get from the number of homeless that's being served, how many are just impacted? The issue with that is the self-disclose, right? So it's not really accurate data. And then if it's something that we can get from like the CBOs, right, that we have, or like Hope Solution that actually work, I think we'll get more information from those that actually work with our population. But H3, I would love to see, I mean, the numbers we've seen so far is, I mean, it's not high, I believe it is more, but it's self-disclosed. So if they don't disclose that they're justice involved, then we won't know. So I don't think that, I mean, that data is helpful, but it won't be accurate because individuals don't self-disclose that they're justice involved. So I'm not sure if that's going to change because that is an option. It's not a requirement. I know that there's questions around on how they can better equip themselves to know if someone is justice involved, but it's not there in their data now unless someone discloses it. So I think that those are important questions. Those are numbers that we should be asking for. I agree with you. I don't think that we can just put a number on based on what we have. There isn't a way to do that. What I have been really interested in, I'm not sure if, and I brought this up previously, but for me, I don't think there's a number that you can put down. One of the things that I have, like, I don't know if you've been able to see the different RFPs and RFQs that have been going out at all. No, y'all gotta get with it now. I've been really impressed, and it's just an idea. I'm not saying that we have to follow that, and I know that there's like different innovation funds with AB 109 that can be looked into, but I really like the avenue that Measure X is going down with H3, in reference to doing an RFP for individuals that they have two categories for those that are, I know it's different because it's innovation funds, but I just like the whole process of them having categories for those that are existing in the program. And then they have opened up for those that are like, that's just starting up, that opens up to like the smaller organizations. Because one of the issues that we have that we heard is that there is not a lot of housing for AB 109. And we know that there's other programs out there, other ideas, or other folks around the county that's too scared to come over here and apply. So they have this RFP out there that's allowing folks to say, hey, it's this one-time funding or money here. How can you utilize it to either build upon what you already have or, you know, go to a program that you would like to create? It's a little bit different because I know it's innovation, but just the whole way that they have it, I thought is a great idea if we were to make some kind of recommendation, because we don't have a dollar amount, right? I do like that H3 asks about adding funding to core for a justice involved person, I believe it was, but I would want to make sure that it is going to be used for that to increase individuals going inside of custody to work with our population. And what would that number look like? So maybe there are some items that we can set a number to. And then the other part, maybe thinking about like some kind of request for people to submit for the funding, but figure out what that criteria looks like. Did that make sense? Because it looks nice the way I typed it out. I don't know if I don't know if it sounds right when coming out my mouth, but did that make sense? All I just said. Okay, did that make? If it didn't actually. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense to kind of try to invite new people into the space. It is always going to enhance the services. It's going to make more competition, which and provides a better product for the end user, the individual who was previously incarcerated. So yeah, I think that's a great approach.
So that's something I've never done like in I don't understand that process. So is that something that is feasible to do? Like, okay, if there's things that we identify where we can actually put a dollar amount on it, and then the other part of it, so we want to allocate this amount of money, so we want to RFP it out with certain categories to allow for those that are already in AB 109 plans to say how they can use the request for it and open it up for others that may be.
Yeah, so
difficult.
no, it's not. I think, because currently your AB 109, housing provider for the community program is currently in contract and won't be up for, the new RFP cycle won't happen until 25, 26
Right.
fiscal year, right? So at that point, all of the AB 109 community programs, including the housing provider, will be up for essentially renewal or if it's a new competitor, it will all depend on how the review panel decides to go from there. But separately, but because these funds would potentially be utilized for jump-starting new programs, new housing programs, there's all sorts of specifications, if you will, that you can put in place for this. So you can decide what types of organisms do you want this do you want it to be nonprofit? Do you want certain county agents or public agencies to compete for these dollars and that they can also subcontract? You could think of it that way. You can obviously make you can suggest what types of housing services you want to see be deployed through the use of these funds. You can even specify the type of service population. So in the case where right now the AB 109 housing providers providing mostly to those on AB 109 probation and to some degree those who are on formal felony supervision. You heard from Hope Solutions, who's also providing housing services specifically to probation clientele, right? But there's those other tier categories that we've talked about in the past. Individuals that are on pretrial, individuals who might be on parole, individuals who have are under no mandated supervision at all, but they have a history of justice involvement and may still struggle with finding housing. So take, age group, a senior housing versus those who might be young adults. So there's a variety of ways in which you can shape the RFP to get at what it is you're trying to ultimately achieve or what you want to see come off the ground.
So if we were to make a recommendation that we would like for a certain amount of funding again to be, say, for example, like I said, allocated for H3 in the core team for a position and the rest are a certain amount for this RFP. What would be that? Would they bring somebody in to do all that, or would they expect for us to come up with information?
Wait, when you say say that last?
I guess for the RFP, that wouldn't be our involvement, right? We would just give this our recommendation.
I think your feedback would
Okay.
be incredibly, because we would need to know what we're actually RFPing out
Okay.
for. Now, you could do a strategy, like you mentioned about the innovation funds through Measure X. It could be something as simple as that. We want to see some innovative housing projects that, highlight certain models that are known to be successful among justice impacted communities. So it would all center around, based on what you're hearing and then what you all know to be true out in the field, what service population you want to see be beyond just simply justice impact.
Right.
That, but are there certain subpopulations within that you'd like to see get lifted up? Or it could just be as general as that. You might say we also want housing that's dedicated to families. That's a whole different approach compared to, saying housing for someone that has co-occurring disabilities versus, so you can think through or at least provide feedback on those elements in terms of your service model, your service population, the types of organizations you'd like to see take this on.
Okay.
I think those are some qualified regions of the county you want to see this be done in. Those are typically some of the qualifiers we think about when we're doing RFP.
Any thoughts from the rest of the committee? Write down these notes.
I'm kind of in agreement with, and Justin, when you were saying like broaden the scope, you mean like more providers, like soliciting more providers as far as seeking the funds? Because one of my concerns is that like the three agencies that presented, one of my concerns is that these funds are kind of a blessing to them, but they're kind of a curse, because I know one of the mandates for H3 is that like ending homelessness for example. Like these funds are great for them, but what happens after these funds are gone to their mission? Is this kind of like a bad thing for them in the end? Like they have these funds, but what happens to those clients that they've served when these funds are gone? Is this counterintuitive to their mission? Like, are these funds like counterproductive to their mission in the long run?
Right.
So should we kind of be trying to like seek out agencies that are like more innovative, like you said, more in tune with like, how do we take these funds and generate like more long-term success,
Right.
like housing needs for clients or, individuals? More innovative. Like, are we just seeking more of the same? That's my thing. Are we just looking for more of the same? I was
We're
actually,
looking for more innovative.
I was here for like H3 and Hope Solutions. I was
Right.
actually at this meeting, and for me,
Oh, that's right.
it sounded like more of what they already were doing. Is that what we're seeking? If that's what we're seeking, we're going to get a limited amount of success. Are we
Right.
looking for something different, or are we looking for more of the same?
I think something more innovative. I mean, it's one of the key things that stuck out to me was H3 responds to that because they're familiar with the one-time funding, right? But we really want something more innovative because we know what we have to cover.
Right.
So it's really understand like this one-time funding, how can they utilize these funds now? Like how can they either they're existing or if it is someone that is currently starting, how can they use it now? And explain to us how would they keep continuing once they have the one-time funds, right? So for our current programs, what?
And from what I heard, they pretty much said they would do the same things they've been doing.
Right, so their response with H3, that's all that they use is one-time funds.
Right.
So they are the wheelhouse of one-time funds. They never.
That's my thing.
And because they have to constantly rotate out based on when the funding is there. So like,
Right.
so that's, I wrote down, that's their thing.
Exactly.
Right, so when
Exactly.
it comes to them, that's the thing. It just say, for example, if they were to request and try to get some funding, it'd just be more of that we can have. Right now, we don't have, really, if you think about it, outside of shelter beds, there really is nothing there for our population unless they fall under these other categories, right? It's not just for adjusted involved. So the connection to them is how to make sure that we have something for our individuals, because there isn't, right? And you are correct, the funds go out, per their response, they get another one to cover. So their goal is not to
Keep juggling.
yes, that's my note, that's what I took away from.
Right.
So, I mean, I was kind of stuck like Justin was, that there really wasn't a dollar amount I could put. So all I could think of was really how can we get more innovative to not only just hear from. I personally don't want to just be stuck with what we have. I would love to find a way to be able to enhance what we already have, and because they have the knowledge behind it, but also be able to open up for those that want to come up with Contra Costa County with new ideas. So how do we do that? How do we open it up for those individuals that do want to create housing for someone but don't know how to respond to RFP or maybe think they don't qualify for that? But I definitely agree with everything you just said.
And if I could share it, just in all fairness, all of the agencies that presented are all subject to funding that's not necessarily sustainable. Because a lot of this grants, is grant driven, right? And then for those that are in contract, they're receiving an allocated amount by way of a contract with the department. But even that money is not always necessarily guaranteed. It's at least committed for that period of time that they're in contract, and afterwards, should funding diminish in some way or the performance of that particular contract provider does not live up to what is expected, that contract can be terminated. You're right back to square one of starting up a new program. So I think, and then even just the nature of these one-time funds, that's what it is, it's one time, right? But how do you utilize it in the most effective way possible for over a longer period of time. That's kind of somewhat of the challenge that you all are faced with.
Yes.
Because you could either serve a lot of people at one time with something that's not as maybe resource heavy, but it could capture a lot of people.
Right.
Or serve fewer folks with a very concentrated, specific model, stretch that out for some time. You know, they're just a multitude of ways, but I think what you guys also heard in that too is, aside from what's currently being provided, where there's potential gaps in service delivery. So, and some of the ongoing challenges, like even after you get someone into housing, like I think I heard from the Hope Solutions about property management once they're in housing and the cost of that, the cost is keeping landlords engaged over
Right.
wanting to partner basically with the private sector and trying to figure out ways to have enough units available where there could be some subsidies toward that unit, but then after some time, hopefully that client can pick up the cost of that housing and can remain in place, right? And what work needs to be done to foster a relationship there, so that way that person can remain housed and do so on a permanent basis,
Right.
you know, so. Yeah, I think it's a matter of thinking through how best to utilize these resources to either see newer things come online and as you think about the continuum of housing resources that's currently available, that justice impacted folks can have access to.
Right.
As you stated, where can things be better enhanced? Where can things be, or funds be utilized as a gap filler because something is missing out of the continuum? Those are some ways to think about how to plan or strategize around construction in the housing priority area.
I like the last part you just said in reference to gap fillers. I know we heard a little bit about those gaps, and I mean, we probably each personally that work in the field know, but is there any way to get that kind of data from like, I mean, Laos presented a lot. I don't think it's captured in like our survey, right? Like those, I know we asked about housing, but not in depth like those gap fillers. I know Hope Solution kind of touched on that, like you said, the landlord engagement transition and all those different things. But is there anywhere that capture that or any data that you guys collect from the CBO that shows?
Not so much in terms of gaps and so the information we gather from CBOs have more so to do with the service that they're currently providing, right? How folks are being engaged in that. I would say what we did here was, what you guys obviously brought up, was this need for interim housing supports. That as folks are waiting in line, whatever that line might be, or in transition from one program to another, or coming out of residential treatment, trying to find a place to land, that is something that is potentially missing for this specific population. And then obviously the need for housing for certain specialized groups, so those with acute mental health or co-occurring disorders, that supportive housing would be needed, or those who might be on fixed income. Because the housing models that were being discussed at length, quite honestly, between Hope Solutions and Lao, had to do with ensuring that clients are gainfully employed to increase their income so that they could sustain their housing over time. But once you're on fixed income, or you're a senior, or whatever the case may be, unless maybe you're living with a family member, where you can share costs. That's going to be, or you have some disabling condition. Being gainfully employed and increasing income is going to be incredibly difficult. So those individuals may not necessarily be successful in those types of programs.
My takeaway from this, to bring it back, is I definitely agree with the information that you broke down. I think we do need to identify in more depth of what we're looking for. And like you said, pretty much kind of figure out what's already out there. For example, like you said, seniors and individuals that may be co-occurring disorders or disabilities. There is other funding that's coming within the county. So in my head, what I visualized, I mean, I like the way you broke it down, you know, visualize was if we could identify exactly what Patrice, you know, said is, you know, what's that, what kind of organizations are we looking for, the type of population that we want to lift up, because we really need to break down, you know, based on our survey, for example, we heard about women. We had someone come present about the Latinx and so on, right? What subcategory or what part of that population do we want to focus on? We know there's individuals that are being released that are not on paperwork that don't have housing, or court probation or felony. What do we want to focus on? What service model? What region? West, East, West, East, Central, all three. What kind of housing do we feel like is needed based on the models that we've seen? You've had experience in the different service models. I've got experience in those. What other research do we see? And I figure because we have all this coming to us, if we were to go down that road and identify what we are looking for and put something out there, then maybe we'll get feedback from all kinds of people on what kind of different models that they may want to present. Like, what can you do with this one-time funding with your program you already have? That's what my idea was, but I don't really know that much about the RFP process for that. So I don't know, what do you guys, go ahead, Doug, I see your hand up.
Yeah, so the first thing I want to say is just the main thing I want to say is that this is important work that you're doing, and I thank you for doing it. This $15 million set aside from the AB 109 reserves is really a unique opportunity, and it's important that the CAB come up with some solid recommendations on how to use it. Housing. I mean, I've spent several years advocating for more AB 109 resources for community supports, especially for housing. And so it's exciting to have this opportunity. You were talking about how, so I'm glad you spent the effort to get information from the service providers in the county. And a couple of things I have to suggest. You were talking about possibly figuring out some kind of innovative approaches. I think one of the best ways to come up with innovative approaches is to look at other jurisdictions to see what models in other jurisdictions, maybe just within the Bay Area, maybe more broadly, what innovative approaches have been used that show signs of working. And I don't have the answers there. I'm just saying, if you haven't put any effort into looking outside the county, it might be useful to do that. On the other hand, if there is something that's working well in the county, but it just doesn't have the scale to address the problem, there's really no harm in just putting more effort, more resources into that same model that may be working well. And I don't know whether the Lau family reentry housing program fits that description or not. I just don't know enough about it. But you know, some mix of just doing more of what we're already doing and doing something innovative might be useful. And of course, a problem that you're grappling with, I can hear that you are grappling with it. Need that is ongoing. That's the big question. And so I don't have any help to offer you there, but I just applaud your efforts to figure this out.
Well, thank you. And I definitely appreciate your feedback. And I guess the part I'm struggling with, I hear from the rest of the committee, I won't say struggling with is I don't want not me, but there is definitely a need for housing. We all are aware of that. And there's different innovative ideas and opportunities to create new housing structure. And I guess I'm just trying to figure out, because we heard from our many individuals, of how to gather that data. Like, I've looked in other counties and seen what other individuals are doing. trying to stay in the front line of hearing all the different housing structures that are available out there, or the innovative ideas that individuals are coming up with, and is not how, but us coming up or agreeing on how we want to use this money. Like, where do we think we want to land at? And that's the part, I guess, I don't want to use the word struggling, that I've just been kind of pondering on for the last couple of weeks and trying to take notes on. It's a very big decision to make. I'll just lay that out there. So what is the way that we as a group think is the best model to go? Because there's so many different ideas. I mean, I have ideas. I'm pretty sure the world has ideas that are best for this particular population. So it's figuring out how to do that with this funding. And I don't want to say struggling with it, but the best recommendation that we can make for this. So I do think we need to kind of identify I guess what our next steps are. Because I don't want us to be stuck still here at square one, because I still feel like we're at square one. Any ideas that we're throwing out of what we're thinking right now? Because we do have to come up with some type of idea of we don't have to have a finalized recommendation. I think it's too early for that, but the idea of where we're going, if there's more data that we need, I think I do. So Justin, I see you took yourself off mute.
Yeah, I just want to commend you as well, Nicole. I don't think we're at step one, right? I think we're starting to become informed and understand a little bit more about the landscape across the county. So I want to highlight that we are doing work and we are moving this project forward. And to Doug's point, I think it's just really complex, and people spend their entire lives working on addressing some of these issues. So for us to do it in a short period of time is a large lift. I think for me, it really goes to, like, we should trust in the county, that the county is trying to do the best they can with dollars. And if we do trust in the county, then I think leaning into the approach that H3 is taking on addressing homelessness, and maybe trying to highlight, like, or mandate or request, whatever word you want to put in there, like, for them to do additional layered work on informed ways to support this population. So, like, it's twofold, right? It's investing in what they're already doing and ensuring that what they're doing is culturally appropriate and sensitive to the population that they're serving. And I think that they would say that they're doing that, but if we can kind of drive that home, that might be a way to address this quote unquote gap that we're seeing, right? Because what I heard from H3 is that they're trying to address homelessness on all 3 or 4 prongs, right? It's that rapid rehouse, and then it's a structured interim housing, and then it's looking at longer term. And they have gaps in all 3 of those steps, right? So I think I'm leaning away from this idea of a wholly new, innovative, and outside approach, just because $15 million for housing and or other programs is really not that much money. And I think we need to really concentrate our work and fund what we hope to continue to fund year over year.
So can I ask in reference to with like the innovative fund? So I wish I would have brought it with me. So the way that it was submitted, because it actually goes into what you said. So the way that it rolled out, even though it won't be identical, was exactly kind of like what you said in reference to current programs, or like you said, the county of, individuals who submit a request on how they could use innovative funds to enhance what they already have, right? Or how new programs could come in and create, take the one-time funding to develop their program to fill up the gaps, in a sense. I mean, I am a big person that really likes H3 as well. I just want to make sure that if we decide to go down that route, we know exactly what the funding is going to. I do know that it needs to be uplifted a little bit more in reference to the reentry, but there's also a lot of funding that's coming down the line from them that we need more information on. There's a lot coming in 2024. So before monies is allocated to H3, they have a lot in the bucket coming. That's around homelessness that may impact, just impact the population.
So then maybe we layer this funding on, right? So if you're saying that there's more money coming in for direct services, right? And like providing housing, maybe we utilize these resources as like opportunities for them to get trained and learn other models and learn other intervention, right? Like allocate $500,000 so that their department has more understanding of the populations that they're serving. And that could be leveraged against these dollars that are coming in to do direct service.
You know, another thought too is, with the concern about whether or not, or how much is the justice impacted population, actually being serviced through the H3's coordinated entry. I think one of the reasons why they lifted up core is because as an opportunity, because then that will be direct outreach to
Right.
individuals that are justice impacted, and putting them in the queue instead of just kind of, serving all homeless populations. And you may state that you're justice involved, you may not, yeah, so it's not as focused.
Right.
And so kind of kind of complementary to what Justin just lifted up, that not only then dollars for training and cultural competency around justice impact, but then having a dedicated team whose job is to find folks who are justice impacted to create that pathway into all these other pronged approaches that they have.
No, I definitely agree with you, because you're actually saying what's in my in my mind in reference to a dedicated team, because they definitely are missing that. It'd be nice if funding could go towards to probably create that within H3, because they don't have, I mean, I know core is there, but to really have someone that is solely dedicated for.
Whole team that's dedicated.
That's all, yes.
Because the way I see that happening will be very different than just what they typically have now,
For the
which is
core
the
team.
2-1-1.
Correct.
So a justice core team could be obviously a team that would be, now one day we have to work odd hours.
Right.
Because we're talking about jail releases, right? They may get referrals directly from providers who are working specifically with the justice population. Receiving contacts from family members who are looking to, I can't even tell you how many times a month I get a call from, a member of the public, just Googled reentry in Contra Costa. ORJ pops up and they call and they're like, hey, my nephew is going to be released at this time or this day, and just looking to see what resources I can connect them to. So they
Right.
could filter those kind of things, but that means that the outreach has to look different than what
Right.
the other core teams currently have in place.
There's another example. I did forward it over to the chair to have her take a look at it, that I experienced in San Francisco that we don't have. So it's like a reentry solely 2-1-1, just for reentry. And I happen to, so funding into something like that, they have a number directly for it. Because I was working with someone to get over to San Francisco, and you call this line, and every single provider that handles reentry has its own option. And they have someone that answers it that gets you connected to where you have to go. And it can be felony, probation, whatever it was. And I was able to get in contact with the deputy director over there, and she called me right back.
Yeah.
And I've never seen that. I'm not saying it's perfect, you don't have their data, but it was, it was nice to be able to see that they had it completely separate, where it wasn't, if you are a family member looking for something that was solely around justice, and you'd have to try to Google and find it, they were able to direct you through it. So it's, if a core team is created for that, I agree, it needs to be separated. They need to be able to be connected to highly connected to like the reentry stuff that's involved within Contra Costa County. That's what's missing within H3. I think it will also help them in other areas because they do have certain programs that people may qualify for that are reentry that they're not sure how to connect into. So having that within H3 would be a plus. It's just ensuring that it will, you know, work the way that we want it to. So, I mean, any feedback, Jeffrey, on what you think? You quiet?
I'm listening, I'm listening. My concern with the core part is what happens when time funding ends, can it be sustained? And to speak what Justin was saying about 15 million not being a lot of money, if you look at the average cost to house somebody one time being roughly around 5,500, $15 million is actually a lot of money. You could probably house about 400 to 500 people, but it is a lot of money. And that's probably more sustainable than the core idea to me.
But then the question I'm gonna ask you is how to house, is it move in?
But-
or-
So I wanted to go back to a question. That's the housing people's job. I wanted-
We have to think about that
But
too.
I wanted to ask another question. How did the three providers, how did we come up with the three providers that presented? How did they
How'd they get here?
How did they get here?
We put out the request, so our focus was to look at the current CBOs that are funded through the AB109 funding, which is LAOS. And then we looked into our main ones, which are Hope Solutions.
So they were invited.
Correct.
Okay, so you were saying that you felt like we were at step one?
No, so let me change my wording. So that's not, when I meant step one sitting here today.
Well,
No, we achieved a lot from where we initially started. What I meant by, let me change my wording, is it more of, I want to make sure that we leave with some kind of idea today, even if it's not set in stone. That's what I mean, not that we're running.
my idea is that we add on to that and that we find a way or figure a way to add to that number so we can get them to give us more ideas. Let the providers give us more ideas.
Right, and that's why. I
They
was thinking of-
did, they did.
More providers give us
Oh,
more
more.
ideas.
Oh.
So that's when I was.
They may give us the innovation, the ideas, is what I'm saying.
So that's where I was coming from, and I need her to help me explain what it is. All I can use is that example, because I don't understand the RFP part, but that's when I was thinking of.
Yeah,
RFP,
so
I was
H, you
saying-
talking about H3's RFP?
Yeah, because that's what they
Yeah.
did by submitting that. They're asking for you to, if you're interested in this money, submit a proposal on what you can do with it to get you can.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that if we engage more providers, we may hear more ideas.
Yes.
We've
And that's
limited,
what she's,
And that's what I'm
y'all are
saying.
essentially saying the same thing.
Yeah.
we've limited ourselves by only engaging three providers.
Well, for the purpose of the conversation, the last meeting was just those, current reentry housing providers in the county. So obviously H3, Hope Solutions and Lao.
Mhm.
And then, and just trying to get a sense of what's currently being provided. And then aside from that, and which is part of the conversation today is given what we heard that exists, what is needed, what could be enhanced, or if we want to go the route of actually, let's just put something out there and see what innovative projects we
Right.
get back. That's a way of doing it. So it would be more than just those agencies that were here to present that would have access and opportunity to apply for RFP.
Those were the two options that, yeah, it was either, and we can still do a little bit of what Justin is saying and take a little bit and say we want to put it over there to represent the core team and also put something out to get more. Oh,
In
sorry.
case you want to ask folks if they need to cancel.
I didn't even realize that. Sorry, you all. Quick time check. It is 1:58 and our meeting is only to 2 o'clock. So is everybody okay to kind of stay? Yes, you okay, Jeff?
Got a few minutes.
Okay. So, for the sake of time, I didn't even realize that hour was going. I wanted to see if we're all in, agreement on kind of where we left off. I do like the idea of putting something there so we can make sure that we do have a current core member, because we have support for the homeless. But I also like the idea of what you just said, because that's what's being done with H3 and Measure X right now, that out to get more innovation funds, not more innovative ideas. But what really made me like it is it's not just for those big programs. It also allows for those small mom and pop that want to be able to help the population to submit a request and say, I want a shot at it. Because one of the things we run into is we get the same old people.
That's how Lao got here.
Right, so when I seen their request that went out, it made me excited because I'm not saying we gotta follow theirs to a T, but the fact that there's two categories for the main people, H3, Hope, and Loud, and then category 1 for the youth. That want to start off, that have a program, and maybe you want to use the funding for something small like rental support or so on. But in my opinion, it also gives you an opportunity to see, because the RFP is coming back up for AB 109. I believe it's next year, she said, is the last year. So it gives them an idea of what can they do with that funding. So that's where I left off. I mean, we can, so I'll come back to this later on, because we do have to make a decision later, but Justin, any feedback?
No, I think the
If we-
conversation was really helpful. I'm glad that we connected. Because this is gonna be a long process. So I'm glad that we had some space to kind of have a dialogue. It's helpful.
And can I ask you guys, if we do decide, so there's two things that, and correct me if I'm leaving, we're thinking about possibly allocating some funds to H3 to make sure that uplift the adjusted impact population and think about a reentry court team, right? And then also an idea of being able to put out some kind of RFP to allow people to submit and provide different ideas. And in doing that, we'll need to break down as a committee, as we talked about before, what subpopulation service, what do we want that RFP to consist of? So those are the two takeaways that I have for this meeting. Is that what we're all agreeing with?
I think the only thing I would add on to that is if we get data from H3 about the actual ongoing gap, that we should consider allocating resources to at least try to cover some of that. Like, I don't think we should completely diverge away from investing in approaches that the county is working
No,
towards.
I still have that. So
Okay.
so two options. The first option is H3. I'll rechange my wording. So investing in the county program, which is H3, like you said, I'll just leave it at that. That's number one. And then the second option that we're looking at or additional is maybe putting out some kind of RFP and identifying what we're looking for so that
Mhm.
people can respond to that with their different ideas.
Yeah, I'm good with both of those. Thanks for clarifying.
I did want to uplift that this would be on page 11 in the packet under each of the four sort of prongs of H3s. Typically, the last sentence of each of those four sentences is highlighting to some degree some gap information. So that's something to pay attention to. So like, for example, street outreach. That they saw.
I thought it's just
46%.
showing like how much they could serve, Patrice, with a dollar
Say that
amount.
again?
I thought it was just highlighting how much they could provide with a certain dollar amount.
Some of these, yes, it just only gave the dollar amount, and some of these kind of spoke to where the need or the demand is. So in this case, for the street outreach, in a year's time, they served 619 unique individuals who indicated justice involvement. And this data shows a growing number compared to calendar year and a 46% increase compared to the prior year. So all to say that if their starting point is just through core alone is 619, and that is a 46% increase from the year prior, I don't know if they anticipate more than that they could touch more than that or what, but and then along with that, they tell you how much it costs a year to do a core team. And then under prevention and diversion, similarly, they have for every 1 million invested in prevention programs, it's estimated that 200 individuals could access these services. I don't know if that's 200 more could access these services, or I'm not quite sure. bridge housing, well, we know that that is not, in existence.
Right.
At all for specifically for justice involved folks. So they're saying just in total, an investment of 3 million will give you 50 units of bridge housing. And that's separate from shelter bed. That's something
Correct.
totally different.
Free up the shelter beds.
Yeah. So each of these, though, doesn't give you the same exact data point in each of those approaches. It does give you some sense of what they're dealing with or in what they anticipate.
Number one is key, is really important. The information from that Justin is asking for will really help. And just to report back from the Council of Homeless meetings are extremely important. I didn't bring it here with me today. What understanding, what funding they already have, and then like you said, Justin, really uplifting to make sure that we allocate funds and invest into what they have so that our Justin impacted population can be utilized. Because I know that there's some funding coming, there is some funding coming in reference to some type of bridge housing and or interim housing. I believe it's in West County. I don't know if it's central. So more information from them about what's coming up within the year will help as well. And figuring out where we could possibly insert ourselves to be able to help our population. And Doug, I'm sorry, I just now seen your hand up there.
It's okay. I just wanted to make sure that you're aware in terms of your thinking about what to ask H3 to do. I want to make sure that you're aware that H3 is a county agency, just like ORJ. And although they are a service provider in the sense that they do run the core teams and they do run a couple of homeless shelters, by and large, all of the housing they provide, that is interim housing, what you might call bridge housing if it meets your definition, and permanent housing, that's pretty much all contracted to CBOs like Hope Solutions and Shelter Inc. and a few others. So if you're thinking about part of what you're recommending for this $15 million be additional spending for providing housing, if you asked H3 to do it, they would just put it out on an RFP, just the way ORJ is doing it with the Lau family development. So, so the housing part of it, actually providing the housing part of it, it's not going to come from H3. It's going to come from contractors.
I don't think so. No, you're absolutely correct. For me, through their process, I don't think it's going to be asking them to do the actual housing, but being able to have the Justin involved population have a connection to the services that they currently have by creating a core team. Because right now, in order to get into those programs you just mentioned, they have to go through court. And hearing from H3, one of the major issues is that they don't have enough staff support, and their focus is on homeless as a whole. So I definitely agree with you by allocating funding to them and say, hey, you figure it out. You are absolutely correct. It's just going to be an RFP out from them. So I guess it's more of, and Justin, correct me if I'm wrong, I guess it's investing in what they have, like the core team, making sure that there is a department or staff that solely focuses on the just impacted population and getting them connected to those programs that you're mentioning. Because I can definitely say what I run into is individuals, you can't get access to the programs unless you're assessed. And you can't get assessed, unfortunately, I know there's a lack of assessed while you're already in, right? So it's how do we help them add more services to that so that we can make sure that there is a focus on those that are being released and coming back into the community that are homeless, that are just impacted. So they have the same opportunity as everyone else out there to apply for the housing that H3 has. I definitely agree with that. Yeah, most of their stuff is subcontracted out. Thank you. Any other feedback or questions? Any other feedback from the committee members? Our takeaway is we are requesting more information from H3. We do have some information from Loud, but are we going to go back and ask them anywhere or just use what?
Yeah, when you, for more information, I'm sorry.
I think you gave it was the information, how many of those individuals are being served within Contra Costa County? And I know I wrote down a note, you said 95 were active caseload and 30 on a waiting list was being serviced on contract. So that kind of answered that question. And I know, so I really what we need is information from H3.
Okay, the utilization rates on the shelter bed.
Correct.
Gotcha.
And I think building on Doug's comment, if there's any allocated resources to AB 109 individuals through H3, right? If they're subcontracting to a portfolio of providers, are any of them specific to the AB 109 population? Or is that all going to Lao and Hope through ORJ?
No, so Lao is AB 109 community program. H3, not through necessarily AB 109 funding, but through other funding sources are touching justice impacted individuals. They may or may not be on AB 109 probation, but I'm sure they hit that sort of tiered group or tier system, but they're not, they're coming through to them in a multitude of ways. Could be through CORE, could be through 211, whatever the case may be. And I think that's the information they were sharing on the, in their write-up. They stated how many people that they were, seeing that had self-reported that they were justice impacted.
So I don't think there's any, and I could be wrong, there's any programs funded that's tied to justice involved. They do have other avenues of, like Patrice said, funding.
Then sorry to cut you off, Nicole, but then what is their allocation in the ORJ's budget? Why do
It's
they
the
have?
shelter.
Yeah, it's just a shelter bed. So, let me see if I can find really quickly.
It's just shelter, but don't they have like 10 or $15 million annually?
No, from AB one, so I'm only talking about the AB 109 funding
Yeah.
allocation. But no, they don't have a $15 million
Oh, I thought it was
annual
pretty large.
allocation. No.
It's just.
I'm not even sure if it's right at $1 million. It might be. But I think it's short of that. So they're not, so of the AB 109 allocation, H3 is not getting a significant.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Mm-hmm. But I will look that up.
That current flow, Justin, outside of the shelter beds, they go through 211 or CORE. They do an assessment called a BIASCADAT. They get scored. Based on that score, they may qualify for other programs that H3 have. It could be mental health. CalWorks has a program, HDAP, SSI. There's a slew of programs under the H3 umbrella, like through HUD and other avenues. And based on individual BIASCADAT and their score, they may qualify for those particular programs. Now, my personal feeling in reference to the dislink is identifying that justice involved person, right? Because they may qualify for those programs, but you have to know if that person has a background or not, because that may cause a barrier for them to get into that program. So I've always wanted to figure out is how do we clean that up? Like how do we identify a better process for those that are being evaluated through CORE to ensure that they qualify for those different programs that they have available, so that they can definitely get enrolled? Because right now, when they get assessed, yes, that again, it's self-disclosed. So at that moment, when they meet the court team, when they do that, yes, that person may say that I'm not just involved, right? But then they may qualify for one of these great programs that they have and waited for a whole year, and then now their name comes up, and now they go through the actual process, and then bam, find out that they have lengthy background and they waited a year or two and now they don't qualify. So different things like that is why I agree with, like, how can we invest more money to where there can be a better lens on just population, like really looking at the criteria for these programs to identify how our population actually gets more assistance from what they have. That part is missing. I would love to know, like, what are the criteria, how they get access, how to make sure that they qualify. That part's not there. And I think investing and trying to be more involved with that county program to enhance that lens is very important. So that's the process right now. There isn't like a real just, process for those that are identified, that's just involved. I know there's other things coming, like, there's so many different umbrellas under H3. The Cal Lane thing is coming, so many different avenues.
Yeah, Callahan is gonna be a big one.
Yeah.
Which you all are gonna hear at the next, at your February meeting. So just really quickly, Justin, I just looked back at the AB 109 budget.
I did too. I was gonna put it
summary.
in chat. It's like 450 for operating costs next year.
540, is that
Yeah.
what was put in? And then, but they did have a program modification, if you guys recall, to, about 285,000, which would take their their total request up to 832,000. And I believe, 1 minute, I could find what the actual budget request was, but I want to say it was core. If I'm not mistaken. Let me just double check. I think that was their program modification, was core.
Hey, Nicole, I'm gonna have to hop off here in a second. Is there anything else we needed?
So that's actually it where we left off. And then once we hear from behavioral health, we may have some adjustments that we think of if we hear about the Cal AIM. Let me just go to the agenda. So let's look at the grid real quick before you drop off. That's on page 22. So we'll come back to, so just quick feedback on what this grid is, so you guys are aware. I had Garyana put this in there so I can bring you up to date. Before Crawford transitioned and Ozzy took over, we were working together with programs and services to put together a grid. So programs and services is working on the CBO grid to identify what services they provide. And since policy and budget is working with the county programs, we're going to also put together a grid. We don't have to work on it right now. We can do it later once we're done with the work groups. But identifying the other housing we're talking about, I'm so sorry. The county programs that we're working with and identifying what services that they provide to our reentry providers. So I wanted to give you an idea what it looks like. This is the one that programs and services working on. This is not ours because they haven't been put together yet. But I just wanted that example to be put in here and we can talk about it more if we have more time in our next meeting, but I wanted to give you an example of what it looks like. So we're going to essentially create something like this, and then we can add this as an item to our work, what's it called?
Plan?
Food deprived.
Work
Yes,
plan.
work on food deprived.
Work plan.
Our work plan. So by the time we have our next call, just take a look at it. If you have any ideas or feedback, bring it, but we can add this. I just wanted to give you an idea of what we're going to add to our work plan. And sorry to move fast, we kind of went over. I just want to go down the agenda. And then schedule future AB 109 excess funds planning. We've already scheduled our next one for February 16th, which is going to be from 11 to 2, which will include both employment and Rubicon. And then the rest of it outlines the remainder of our timeline for March 5th.
So can I
I
say,
agree.
yeah, for the February 16th meeting, this is a pretty long meeting because you're gonna hear now the employment side. Also, we had to reschedule the, our behavioral health, priority update for, behavioral health division's request to provide, more, recent data based on their planning around CALA, Justice Initiative. So they'll have more to share in February. So that's why that particular meeting is going to be kind of lengthy. You're going to go over 2 priority areas in one sitting. And yeah. Oh, there was one more thing, Garyana, that I was supposed to mention. Oh, I know that there was request to hear about the guaranteed income along with the employment piece. They've requested to maybe present at the pre and post-release engagement component. If that's okay with you guys, we can slate them for that.
Yes.
Okay, that would be for the March 15th. So it won't be discussed a part of the employment piece, but in conjunction with the pre and post-release connections. Okay.
Okay. I think we covered everything. I do, is there any additional questions or comments?
I can say really quickly on the GEMA project, that was one item on there that I think you asked to include on the agenda. So the GEMA project is another organization.
I did.
So first of all, word is getting around that you guys are doing all this planning on this 15 million. So and also conversations around services related to women. So the GEMA project is an organization that has done some in-custody services specifically to women. And have requested to do a presentation to the CAB. Brought it to the CAB leadership, to all the chairs, to see where it would be best placed to have this presentation given. I think the consensus was to do a full CAB meeting, right? So anywho, that's why that was there on your agenda to discuss what questions this committee may want to have asked or posed to the GEMA project, but that could be done offline just to save folks time. If you have any ideas or questions you want to hear from them, you can email us, and we can also email you a link to their website.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna ask if the link can be sent to them too, because I looked it over. I know that Programs and Services is coming up with questions. Justin, I don't know if you still have that document. Garyana, can you send out the document to Justin and Jeffrey for those questions? So I know you gotta go, Justin. So Policy and Budget and Programs and Services went back to an old document that was created with a list of questions we looked at that has some budgetary questions on it that we were hoping to ask all of our partners. We never got to utilize. So we have split it in 2, and she could send those questions to you both and then look it over and see, because Justin, you've seen it before, but it's been a while. And we can use some of those questions because we already have questions outlined. If there's more that you want to add, shoot them in there. There is no wrong question. Okay, so thank you for pointing out, Patrice. If there's no additional questions, and I thank you for staying over the extra 23 minutes, we can adjourn to our next meeting on February the 16th. And we're all done.